Hey everyone, this is Finn, and in this video I am going to give you a quick introduction to the program Adobe Animate. Right now, I have Adobe Creative Cloud, the desktop app, open. I am going to make sure I am selecting all apps under Apps, and then I'm going to scroll down until I find Animate. Another way to find Animate is by going to Categories and going to Video and Motion, and it'll be under the desktop apps there. I already have it installed, but if you don't, please make sure that you click the button here that'll say Install. Since I have Animate already installed, I'm just going to click Open. When you open up Animate, this is what you are going to be seeing. We are clicked onto the home page. Up here it says Start a New File Fast. These are different presets for projects that you can click to start something more quickly. And down here are our recent files. Right now you probably don't have any, but if you've used Animate before and once you start using Animate more, you'll see all of your FLA files here. A file for Adobe Animate is called an FLA file. To create a new FLA file, click Create New. If you have one already that you'd like to open, then click Open. For now, we are going to press Create New. And that'll bring us a new document window. To adjust the size of your canvas, you can change your width and height using these two input boxes. For now, I am going to keep it with the full HD preset. That just means that our canvas is 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. That is the standard HD pixel size. With all of our settings modified the way we want to, press Create. And now we have a new file. We are zoomed in a little too much, so I'm going to go up here to this drop-down arrow where it says 100%. I'm going to click that drop-down menu and select Show All. Now I'm going to give you a brief explanation of the different parts of the Adobe workspace. This center white box is your stage. The white box represents the screen dimensions that you've set for yourself for your canvas, and everything that is drawn inside of this canvas is going to be what your audience sees. This is the space that you are actually going to be drawing or manipulating objects. This space down here is called your timeline. Each of these little boxes represent frames on your timeline. The numbers right above them correlate with the number of the frame. 5, 10, 15, all the way to 30 frames where we actually reach 1 second. These numbers up here represent our seconds. We've got 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. You can tell which frame you're on by this number right here that says 1F. And you can see that our frame rate is 30 frames per second. This section to the very left is called your toolbar menu. All of these different icons represent different tools that are going to help you create and modify your animations. Let's start with right here. It is our rectangle tool. Select it. You're going to get this little crosshair, or this little, that replaces your cursor. Click and drag, and that is going to allow you to create a shape, a rectangle shape, any kind you'd like, and then release to set on that shape. We also have an oval tool that does the same, but with circular shapes, and a polystar tool that does the same but with a hexagon shape. We've also got a line tool. You click and drag to one place from another and then release to create that line. And now I can close that to create a new shape. We also have this text tool. I'm going to click there and type hello. I also have an eraser tool. Notice how we're not erasing the entire object as one. It treats it like a drawn object. So you can modify different objects by placing them and then erasing different parts. And it actually snaps to the different corners to make it easier to create new shapes. This paint bucket tool. Right now our fill color is white, so to demonstrate the paint bucket tool, I'm going to click here on the box and change it to red. And this paint bucket tool does what all paint bucket tools do. It takes a surface, usually bound by its like transparency or color, and it replaces that. It seems to be transparency here, because even though these boxes they look like they're clear, they actually are filled with white. So when I erased that bit right here, it didn't only erase those two lines, it erased the white space inside, which is why when I pressed that space there, it changed the white layer to a different color and not the entire stage. This will actually not allow you, if I'm using the paint bucket, to click other empty spaces. It won't allow you to color the stage that way. To do that, you have to use the Properties tab, and that's going to bring us, after I click the Selection tool, that's going to bring us to the Properties tab. Right here, where it is probably already selected as Library, make sure you are clicking the left tab to it called Properties. That's going to bring up a lot of information about whatever is selected. Right now, it is just the default properties of the document that include the stage color and the stage width and stage height. You can modify those here. If I wanted to change the stage background color to green, I could do so. If I wanted to select one of these shapes, it changes the properties and what it tells us. We are actually looking at an object here. Before it was selected on dock. Object allows us to see the properties of the object we are selecting. And to change the fill of this oval shape, we are going to click the box next to fill here and click on a new color. And now we have a green circle. I can also click on the individual lines of the shape. If I hold Shift and click the different lines, I can select them all. And we see that we have new properties. like style and width. Click on style and I can change it to a more drawing looking line. I will zoom in so that you can see. It is stippled. You can change the stroke size. Which in this case makes the dots more far apart. If you want a more thin line, you're going to want it to be smaller, like 1. And then we can change the width down here. I guess on this style we can't change the width, but if I select a different style, like the hairline style, this will allow me to change the width, and I can change it from just a normal standard, the scaling is the same of the line on one end as it is on the other. I can change that. And that changes all the lines as one. I'm going to make sure I have uniform selected. Going back over here to the tool menu, I am going to click the free transform tool, and then I am going to use that to select my entire oval right here. Notice that if you click the middle, you are only going to select the colored part. Right now I am scaling it in to show you that the line is left behind. You can also transform this line on the outside by itself. I'm going to press Ctrl Z to go back. To make sure that I have the entire object selected, I'm going to click and drag to create a box and use that box selection to grab the entire thing. Then using this free transform tool, I can change the transform of the different sides, and it will scale down the lines as well as the color. I can do the same thing with this new object that I've created. If I click and drag, notice how I missed a little bit right here. If I pull it away, it'll actually leave that little corner behind, so you want to be careful, as well as it left this little part behind. To help me with that, I'm going to use this polygon tool. I'm going to click one space and then click each different path here to create different lines. Every click you do, it's going to leave basically a point between the lines, and you want to end it. Sometimes it takes a fight to get it to understand that you've ended that polygon selection. Me personally, I prefer to use the lasso selection. I'm going to select a different tool just to get rid of what I had going on there. The leftover selection lines is what I mean. And now you are going to right click on the polygon tool, the little arrow that is next to it, and then you are going to want to select lasso tool. And instead of having to deal with that, this is just a free draw lasso. You click and draw, it creates this line, and that lets you manually select whatever shape or drawing is inside. Now I'm going to select my free transform tool again. And now we can transform the entire object. If I click the origin dot in the middle, I'm going to drag it to this little corner here. It'll actually snap along the lines, which is very helpful. I can click and drag outwards to scale. Notice how the origin line is our pivot point now. Now we are going to clear our stage here. Make sure that you have your selection tool selected, either one of them. Click and drag to create a box selection. Once everything is selected, you can press delete on your keyboard to delete everything. Now we are going to want to change our stage color back to white. So I am going to go all the way over here. Notice how it is changing the stage any color that I am hovered over. That's because once you click that box with the stage color in it, it creates this eyedropper tool as your cursor. I'm going to go over to white. So just be wary of that. Now that we have our stage clear, I'm going to show you how to use your library. To find your library, click on this Library tab to the right of your Properties tab. This is going to show you your currently empty library. You can add things to your library, such as saved drawings that you draw in Animate, or PNGs that you draw in a different drawing program. I'm going to show you how to save a very simple drawing to your library. First, I'm going to create a little body using a rectangle. I'm going to change the fill color down here by clicking this green box and changing it to blue. Now I'm going to give him some pants. Then I'm going to find something that's roughly a skin color over here. This is just based off of the preset options. You can get better colors by using this color picker. So let's get a better color. I can change what the setting I am changing is by clicking one of these little radio buttons. This H stands for hue, so I am now changing the hue of my color, something more flesh toned. Make it a little more red by changing the base color here. There we go. That's a good one. Now let's create a neck using the rectangle tool. It's going to snap to the shirt rectangle. Now let's create a head using the oval tool. And now I'll give him a couple arms. Put him in a little T-pose. And some bare feet, because we're in quarantine and we're not wearing shoes. Now I'm going to use the oval tool and select a black color to give him little eyes. And select white to give him little eye shines. And now I am going to take this oval tool and select a color that I think would be good for a mouth. I'm going to choose this nice red color here. I'm going to draw it over here, not actually on our character, because I'm going to show you how I can use this sphere, or this oval shape, to create a half circle. Now we are going to use our box select to turn this circle into a half circle by selecting the top half and pressing delete on your keyboard. Now let's select our line tool, click this end, and then drag. It'll snap to the shape, and you are going to create a line. I'm going to zoom in on this mouth by pressing Ctrl+ a couple of times. Use these scroll bars to slide into position. Now I'm going to use this line tool to create a little set of teeth. I'm going to click right here and drag down. Now I'm going to click from the end of this line and drag a horizontal line. I'm going to click from that line and attach it to the top, and we've created a little set of teeth there. Now I'm going to select my paint bucket tool and make sure that I have the white color selected. Paint his teeth white. Now I'm going to take my line tool, click and drag from this point because I'm going to make a tongue. By just tilting my lines, and even though these shapes can be very angled, I'm trying to make it as soft as I can. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to make sure that's what I want. Press my selection tool, click this line. Yep, it's attached. I'm actually going to use my free transform tool to change this line a little bit. Grab the end. We need to take this white origin circle and use this as our pivot point. And now I'm going to drag until it clicks at the end of that line there. Now we're going to zoom out using Control minus. I'm going to grab my paint bucket tool and I'm going to find a color that would be good for a tongue. And since I have that space already selected, it's actually going to change the color that I am changing it to as we select our color. That's a pretty good tongue color. I'm going to press my selection tool again and press Control minus to zoom out. And then I'm going to click and drag to select the entire mouth, lines and all. And we are going to drag our mouth onto our happy little fella here. Click and drag the whole object. And we have given this guy a big smile. He is so happy. If we want to scale it, keeping it selected, I can choose the free transform tool. And we can scale it. If you find that you are scaling it by larger increments than you would like it is snapping to different parts and you don't like it, press Control plus to zoom in. And you'll be able to modify it exactly the way you'd like to. There we go. I love that. Now let's press Control minus to zoom out. And we've got a lovely little guy. I'm going to press Control S to save. And now I am going to show you how to convert this guy into a symbol that we can use later. I'm going to click and drag to create a box selection. And then I am going to press this Modify tab at the top. And let's press Convert to Symbol. We are going to name it. It is going to be of type graphic. And we are going to name it Happy Guy. And press OK. Notice how our guy there's the little dots that we saw when we had him selected, the different parts of him. That is no more. Now he is one object. If I press delete on my keyboard with him selected, that is okay. I can actually create my guy by clicking and dragging him from the library, his image in the library, or his name of the item right here. I can click multiple. Now we have just a couple of happy guys standing next to each other in a T-pose. I'm going to select both of them by holding Shift and selecting them and pressing the delete button on my keyboard. Now I'll show you what you want to do if you want to import an image that you did not create in Animate. Let's click File, Import, and then you have two options. You can import to Stage or you can import to Library. Let's click Import to Library. A File Explorer window is going to open, and then you just need to navigate to where the picture you want to import is. For this, I am going to import my green bird and my green bird wing. Let's click that first object, the bird without a wing, and then press Shift and select the other one since they are right next to each other. If you wanted to select two items that were not next to each other, you would want to click and select one of them, and then press Control and select the other. Now let's press Open with our items selected, and it is going to import both of those images in. Now I'm going to click and drag the image onto our stage. Both of them, the body and the wing. And now we have both pieces, both sprites to create this little bird. And those are two pieces that I drew in Paint Tool Sci, not in Adobe Animate. If you look down here, we have one layer and one keyframe. It's our beginning keyframe. I don't actually want both pieces of my body for the bird on one layer. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z a couple of times, or you could have simply selected the item and pressed delete on your keyboard. I'm going to name this layer by double clicking, and I am going to name it Bird Body. I'm going to lock this layer because I am not going to need to edit this one. I'm going to start by animating the wing. So to lock it, press this button right here, and that just makes it so that we can't select or mess with this bird. Anything on this layer. Press this plus button to add a new layer, and we are going to double click on where it says layer 2, and I'm going to name it wing. And now let's drag in our wing again. I'm going to put it right here, and I'm going to put its origin pivot point right here. To test it, I'm going to, with the free transform tool selected, you are going to make sure that you test your pivot point before we start animating to make sure that it looks good. I think that if we moved it from this point, it would look good. And now the only thing for us to do is add more frames and then create a couple more keyframes that'll help us convey the motion of this wing moving up and down. A keyframe is a special kind of frame that stores an image or a state of the objects that you placed inside of this stage inside of those frames. Since we have two different layers, if I select this visible icon, this eye icon, it'll show us what is on each layer. And since we named them, that's also a good practice to name them exactly what it is. But we want to extend the frames for both of these layers. So we are going to find 1 second. We're going to click and drag to select both of those layers, right click, and press Insert Keyframe. Now we have two keyframes, one at the beginning and one at the end of 1 second, which is 30 frames. Since as you can see, when I scrub the timeline, nothing happens. That's because we haven't edited either of these keyframes to be any different. If I edit somewhere in the middle of the timeline, it is always going to store that change to the frame before it. So it's not going to create a new keyframe if I scrub over here. And with this keyframe selected, I start editing something, like I move this wing down. That's not going to change anything on this frame specifically because it is just a normal frame. But since the frame before at the very beginning is a keyframe, it's going to save that change inside of this one here. So to undo that, I'm going to press Ctrl Z a few times. I'm going to keep these two frames the way they are because I am going to start from the middle. The reason why I'm going to do that is because I want this wing to go up and down. And so this is the down position. Then it'll go up, and then it'll go down again. And then that animation will loop over and over again, starting from down, which is where it ended. Then go up, and then go down again. So let me show you how to do that. Let's click at 15 here, 15 frames. Make sure you are selecting your unlocked wing frame. Let's right click. And let's say insert keyframe. Now I want to put the wing at the end position of it being up. What I mean by that is I'm going to want our wing to go up like this, and then stop here, and then it's going to return down again. Right now it does that, but in a very jittery way. See what I mean? So I'm going to press play. So you kind of have that very basic motion, but the frames are not smoothly transitioning at all. And what that means is we need to add more keyframes. Let's click the middle. It is around 8 frames because we are starting from 1, in between 1 and 15. So about 8 frames is going to be good. Let's right click and insert keyframe. Now, a great tool that animators use is the onion skinning tool. That is the tool right here that shows a darker circle in front of a lighter circle. When animating, it's very helpful to be able to see a ghost of an outline of the frames before and after the frame you are trying to modify in the middle. And since we are at that point of trying to change this middle frame here to somewhere between this first frame and this frame at the very middle of the timeline, let's turn on the onion skinning tool and then take the green line. As you can see right here, nothing shows up. That's because our range is too small. We're going to click that green line and drag it to the keyframe right here. As you can see, a very faint ghost of an outline of that that keyframe will show up. So let's rotate while our keyframe that is at 8 frames is selected. Let's rotate right here, right to where the tip is at the center of these 2 endpoints. Now I'm going to click this blue tag, this scrubbing tool, and click and drag, and as you can see, that motion is a little bit smoother. It's a lot smoother than going from here to here directly. Even though this by itself is also a cute animation. Some animations can have very little amounts of, some animations can have very little frames, and still be very charming and good for games. But I want to show you how to create something smoother and how keyframes and adding them are going to create that smooth transition from the more drastic motion changes. Let's find a frame in between frame 15 and 30. I'm going to choose frame 22. And then I'm going to make sure onion skinning is selected and that we can see that last ending frame. Let's right click and remember to insert keyframe. And now let's click and drag to pretty much exactly the same as this keyframe here. In fact, if you wanted to just right click and press copy frames and then right click over here and paste and overwrite frames, that will create pretty much the same effect. I just wanted to show you how to do it all manually. Let me show you what that looks like all together. To see it loop, I am going to select this loop button right here, this icon of an arrow going in a square, like kind of circle. Oh, as you can see the range, I'm going to press pause. The loop range right here, these two arrows, you need to click and drag and make sure that the entire timeline has this blue space over it. This allows you to only loop a certain section of your animation if you have a bigger FLA file and a bigger timeline. Alright, that's much smoother than before. Another thing that can make it look choppy is how much space you have in between frames. Right now we have quite a bit of space. So I am going to change it from, let's see, right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames in between 1 and 2. I'm going to change that so that we have 3. Highlight the frames that you'd like to delete and right click, then go up here to remove frames. And that is going to cut those frames out completely. Let's make sure that the rest also are spaced by that as well. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to right click, remove frames. 1, 2, 3. Right click, remove frames. 1, 2, 3. This one actually has 1 extra, so 4. And then I'm right clicking and remove frames. Alright, and you can see that since we have more frames on the bottom layer, at some point the wing just kind of disappears. To fix that, click and drag on all of the frames down here and right click and then remove frames. Now let's press the loop button again, make sure that we have the entire timeline of the animation selected, and press play. That's better. If you wanted to add even more keyframes, you could do so quickly by right-clicking, pressing Insert Keyframe. Let's turn on our onion skinning, and as you can see, we see way too many frames now. So let's drag back, and I will quickly move this in between the other 2 frames. Now I will select the 2 frames, or now I will select the middle frame in between these 2 frames. Right click, insert keyframe, and since our onion skinning is still a good range, we can just use that and move it right there. Then I can actually right click and copy this frame because we've got the same transition going down on the way back. So I'm going to right click on that empty space and press paste and overwrite frames. I'm going to turn off onion skinning so I can see a little better to verify that, yep. Now I can go to the first or the second keyframe, right click on that, press copy frames. Now let's go over to our last space that we need to fill in between frame 13 and 17. It is at frame 15. I'm going to right click and press paste and overwrite frames. Now I'm going to press the loop button again and press play. First, I'm actually going to lock my layer so that we don't have to see the selection on any of those, and we don't have to waste time going through and deselecting on each of those keyframes. Now let's press play. We probably don't have the motion of a bird quite down, but we do have a smooth transition of the wing flapping up and down. I'm going to click and drag my entire timeline, right click and remove frames. And I am going to remove both of my layers, pressing the garbage can, and it is going to give me a new layer 1. That is how I clear my scene if I want to start over. In the process of learning animation, you probably are going to be starting over multiple times, so don't be afraid to lose some progress to gain progress. This has been your introduction to Adobe Animate, a tour of its interface and some application of how to use its different tools, how to use the library window, and how to modify things using the properties window. We also had some fun playing around creating keyframes and creating some simple animations. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you and have a wonderful day.